Welcome once again to another of my chit chat classes, and today we're going to be talking about something that really bothers almost every baker. And guess what that is? Why did my cake sink? Yeah, why did my cake sink? We're all tired of sunken cakes that are quite embarrassing, really. But there's always a solution, so I'm going to give you all the solutions, as many as I can in this class. So now, one of the first reasons why your cake sank is probably because you got too excited, okay? You were so excited, oh, the cake is in the oven, and oh, I'm so excited, and you were trying to peep into the cake, and the next thing you opened the oven, and you're not supposed to do that, okay? Opening the oven before the cake is set is not a good idea, okay? So some people, they open the oven 3-4 times during baking. You're just upsetting the cake. Let the cake be, okay? Just open the oven just about 5 minutes before the official time for you to open the oven. That's when you can feel free to say, okay, let me open the oven, okay? And when you even open the oven, you open gently and you shut it gently. Any little aggravation can upset the cake, and the cake that had risen now sinks, okay? So don't get too excited about opening the oven. Open the oven when the recipe says at this time, check your cake, okay? You open the oven gently and you do your skewer test, okay? And if your skewer comes out clean, then your cake is ready to come out. If not, you gently close the oven back and then you wait again another 10-15 minutes or 5 minutes, depending on the timing for the cake, and then you check again gently. Don't touch that cake, don't touch that oven when it's just about 5 minutes in, okay, or 10 minutes into baking. No, let it cook, let it get acclimatized to the environment in there. Let your cake bake in peace, please, okay? Let your cake bake in peace so that you can be proud of your work after baking, okay? So don't open the oven too often during baking. In fact, don't open it before it's like 5 minutes to the time. For any reason, don't open, okay? And then if you even open gently and shut it back gently, okay? Another reason why it falls is that you're allowing, now while the cake is in the oven, it's trying to bake and the temperature is rising, and then you just open it, wow. But some people just open, wow, okay? And you open your cake like that, and cold air goes in and mixes with the hot air in there, and everything is confusing. The cake is confused. Everything goes up and it goes down, and then when you close it back, you just go, wow, you know, like you're fighting a war or something. No, because when you do that, you're going to shake up your ingredients, and then the cake will say, oh, this is an amateur, I'm going to fall, okay? So don't open your oven too often, and don't shut it harshly. Gently does it. Thank you. Okay, so the next reason why your cake probably sank is that you brought your cake out too early. Your cake wasn't ready to come out, but you were so excited, okay? Now, so people's ovens operate in different ways, really. And so my oven may work a little faster than yours. So or a little slower than yours. So if a recipe says 45 minutes, it may work that way for me, but for you, it may not work that way. So what you need to do, okay, is when the recommended time for you to check is approached, then you go and check. And if you check with a skewer or toothpick and it doesn't come out clean, please leave your cake in the oven. Gently close the oven door back gently and leave it for 5-10 minutes and check again gently. Okay, you know why? Because that cake is not ready. You're just saying, you may just want to go with the recipe time, but maybe your oven works differently from my recipe or the recipe of whoever wrote that recipe. Okay, and so you just bring it out because they say 45 minutes and it's 45 minutes, so I bring it out. No, your cake is not ready. Make sure it is ready inside before you bring it out, because if you bring out a cake that is ready, looks ready on the outside, it has risen nicely, but inside is not well cooked, what's going to happen? As it cools, it's just going to sink. It will sink in the middle. That's what's going to happen. Okay, and your cake is not going to look so pretty anymore. And sometimes that uncooked bit inside is going to be a problem for you. Probably have to bake another cake. So don't bring out your cake too early. Don't underbake your cake. Okay, thank you. So you know that now. Now, another reason why your cake sank is, guess what? Too much baking powder or too much baking soda in the recipe. You probably did not follow the recipe's instructions. You didn't measure your baking soda or your baking powder right. Okay, you may have put too much, and when you put too much, if you're in my model 1 class, you would have learned how to level out your measuring spoon with the baking powder. You have to have a level spoon. Okay, you have to learn how to level it. In model 1, you learn all that. So you level, never heap your teaspoon or tablespoon or whichever measuring spoon you're using for baking powder or baking soda. Otherwise, you're gonna have problems with that cake. I assure you, you're gonna have problems. So don't heap, no heaping teaspoon, no heaping tablespoon, no heaping of any kind when you're measuring your leavening agents, which are your baking soda and your baking powder. All you do is level, and you can learn how to level properly in our module 1 class. Okay, so don't make that mistake, otherwise your cake is going to sink. Okay, sometimes too, you just didn't measure right. Okay, so you didn't measure right, you made a mistake. Accept that you made a mistake and try it out again. Don't just say, oh, this recipe is nonsense, it's rubbish. You didn't measure right. You were too excited or too much in a hurry, or just inexperience made you not measure your ingredients right, especially your leavening agents, which are the baking powder and the baking soda. So we can go on to the next one, not measuring any of your ingredients right. Okay, baking is a chemistry, and when you're given a recipe, it's been tried, it's been tested. Okay, so you know, recipes don't just, we've tried it this way, tried it that way, and send the what will give you the best outcome. And now when you're measuring, you say, oh, I'm going to use a measuring cup, I don't have skills. As a baker, you must have skills, and as a baker of the 21st century, you must have digital skills. I'm sorry, that's just what I believe, and that's what works for me. You must have digital skills, and you must at least have manual skills. And measuring your dry ingredients, I highly recommend you use only scales to measure your dry ingredients. So when you don't measure your ingredients right, and there's the wrong chemistry in the cake, and it goes into the oven, even if you don't open the oven up and down the place, but there's just something wrong with your mix, your cake is going to sink. It's just not going to look the way a properly measured cake is supposed to look. So that is another reason why your cake sank. So ensure that you measure your ingredients correctly. Now, another reason, very interesting reason why your cake sank could be that you had incorrect moisture. Too much moisture in your batter, too little moisture in your batter can cause the same problem. Okay, so you may have that problem because You put too much, yes. There's a recommend. That's why we have recipes. That's why we say come for classes, because you just don't you're just trying from your head. Okay, when you're trying from your head, of course you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes, you're going over and over and over the same thing all over again. So the moisture level of the cake may also, if the cake is too dry or if the cake is too wet, it can make your cake sink. So that is another reason why your cake may have sunk. And then another reason, this reason many bakers make this mistake: overbeating your batter. Overbeating your batter, especially when you're mixing the wet and the dry ingredients. You're supposed to fold in, not big like you're using a mixer, you're turning your hand into a mixer. It's only when you're creaming, when you're doing the butter and sugar method, and you're creaming, yes, it needs all the friction and all the power. But when you come to mixing your flour, your dry ingredients with your wet ingredients, you've got to fold in, do it as gently as possible. If you overbeat your batter, you are not going to enjoy the outcome of that cake, I assure you. So overbeating your batter, especially in the last stage when you're mixing in the flour or the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients, you're going to have a problem if you overmix. So you do it gently and just follow the recipe. Do it gently, don't overdo it. So another reason why you may have, I'm sure you can pick some few mistakes you've been making already, I'm sure. Now let me tell you another reason why your cake may have sunk. Incorrect pan size. Incorrect pan size. Okay, the recipe says make a 2-layer 8-inch cake with this batter, and you use a 6-inch pan, okay, or a 4-inch, a smaller pan or a bigger pan or whatever. But usually when it's a smaller pan, I'm sure your cake is going to sink. Now follow the size guide. I have a size guide in Module 1 where the pan size guide, so it helps you to know how to increase your ingredients for a bigger size or reduce it for a smaller size. Okay, so using the incorrect pan size is going to make your cake sink. You're going to have a problem, okay, and you're not going to be happy about it. So using your correct pan size, we have that also in Module 1. You can always learn how to increase the sizing of your cake with the correct pan size. Okay, now, so that's one reason why cakes sink. Now another reason, I hope you're taking down notes. I hope you're enjoying this and you're learning. I'm sure you're saying, oh yes, I did that, yes, I did that. Yeah. That's what classes are for, to make you a better person. Okay, so another reason why cakes sink is that sometimes when you cool the cake too fast, you bring the cake out of the oven. There are different types of cakes. For instance, like with a cheesecake, you're supposed to cool it so gently, like a cheesecake, you leave it in the oven. For some cheesecake recipes, you actually leave it switch off your oven, leave it in the oven for like an hour, switched off. Then you bring it out, keep it in just on the table, no AC, no fan, just leave it there. It's a stage by stage cooling, especially when you're working with your cheesecake, otherwise it's going to sink and it's going to crack. Now, if you're working with your regular cakes, also don't cool too fast. Okay, it's usually, especially there's some cakes that are very temperamental. For instance, the Victoria sponge cake is very temperamental. If you try all this last minute cake, and then you bring it out and put the fan on it, that cake is going to sink. A Victoria sponge cake will not even tolerate that level of, draft or wind on it right out of the oven. Some of my recipes can bear it, some can't. So it's best to make sure you're baking at the right time. You're not doing a rushed baking. So you bake your cake, you bring it out of the oven, leave it in your pan to cool till like almost warm, or depending on what the recipe says, and then you now turn it over. When even some recipes, like my red velvet, I'd rather just let it cool in the pan because it's a very soft and moist cake. So I let it cool completely in the pan. And I can also risk that with one or two of my chocolate cake recipes. Okay, so don't rush cooling your cakes. That's the bottom line. Don't rush it. Don't rush to bring out the cake from the pan. Okay, unless the recipe specifically says bring it out, you must bring it out at this time. Okay, so that's another reason why your cake sinks. Okay, now let's go for the last reason for now. We're still going to touch on this issue again. Okay, your batter sitting out for too long. Okay, you've mixed your batter, you've put everything in. Your oven should have been preheated. You should have preheated your oven, ready for your batter. Your pan should have been prepared. That's why you prepare your pan at the right time, at the beginning, before you even start doing anything. And then your oven should be preheated at that time. So when you've mixed up your batter, ready to go into the oven, let it just go in. But when you keep your batter sitting out there, okay, and your batter, especially batters that use only baking soda, you won't have a good rise, and you may have a rise and a fall. Why? Because baking soda is single acting. It's not double acting. It's single acting, meaning it acts once, it rises once. Okay, and once it touches the fluid, it starts its work. Now for baking powder is double acting. Okay, baking powder at first, when it mixes with the fluid, it has a bit of a rise, and then when it goes into the oven, it starts to rise. It has a second rise. So that's why we say baking powder is double acting. Now, if you're baking a cake that uses only baking soda, I would advise you just mix up your batter and put it in the oven. Otherwise, you won't have a good rise, and you may have a rise and a fall. So keeping your batter too long before baking may be the reason why your cake sank. So ensure that you do all the things in order. Prepare your pan before you even start mixing your ingredients. Do all you need to do. Preheat your oven, mix up, put in the oven. That's the safest route to go. Okay, there are times you may have to leave the batter over, but just minimize that, because that is definitely one reason why cakes sink. So I hope I've been able to help you in one way or the other to become a better baker, and to help you to bake it until you make it. See you in my next class. Ta-da!